SpeakPipe.com, viewer voice messages. Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready? I am. We're a few hours away from Saints Chargers. We're releasing this on a Sunday. If you want your voice heard, if you want to speak to the face of the franchise, if you want to have your questions answered, sports related, football related, life related, whatever, it doesn't matter, all fair game. Today we've got quite a few. We're going to go ahead and rip through these. Hope you're all having a fantastic Sunday morn. Here we go.
James, this is Chris back at it with you, my guy. You're the man, the myth, the legend, the face of the franchise, the best in New Orleans Saints media by far. I had to repeat that because I had commented today according to last video, so I'm honored. But anyway, we haven't fired Dennis Allen yet. What is up? The clock's ticking. Tick tock, and we haven't fired him yet. Like, come on, what are we doing? Like,
we're not going to fire him. So if you're not going to fire him the day after the Broncos game, then you're not going to fire him unless we have a few more really, really embarrassing things happen. Like if we lose to the Chargers 42-0, stuff like that. That happens. Okay, sure. But right now, I think what I think is happening is I think Mickey believes that if the offense gets healthy, which it is, and we can string some wins together, then we potentially could salvage the season to a 9-ish win, potentially wild card, potentially NFC South type situation. Now, if that doesn't happen, let's say they try that and we end up going 8 wins, 7 wins, we can't dig ourselves out of the hole, then I think you go ahead and fire him in the offseason. Like I said when we talked about this last week, we think Dennis Allen is a huge problem, right? Like, we think he is a locker room issue. I would assume Mickey and the players know much more than we do. And if he's not an actual locker room problem, like if they do not hate him, if they do not think that he is negatively affecting the players' morale, then I don't see the problem in keeping him around for the rest of the season per se, unless things do get just completely out of hand. But I don't blame Mickey, I guess, for not firing him after the Denver game. But in the grand scheme of things, it really probably doesn't matter if we fire him after the Broncos game or after the season is over.
Are you more mentally incompetent than Joe Biden? I mean, what are you talking about? Look beyond the result. I see it in front of my televisions. I see it on my television screen every single week. And I don't know which one's more of a tragedy, both of the hurricanes that just hit or our defense. I don't know which one's worse to even hear about. It's crazy. I mean, this is another level of delusion. Mickey Loomis sitting here saying, look beyond the results. Chuck Noll, Bill Belichick, Tom Landry, and name Hall of Fame coaches. Dennis Allen is not even on that level. There are levels to this. They are.
Yeah, I mean, Dennis Allen is not even a winning head coach, much less a Hall of Fame level head coach.
And different. They are different plane than what Dennis Allen is on. Dennis Allen is the worst coach of all time, in my opinion. What do we do from here? I mean, this is absurd. I don't even know if I should watch the game next week.
I would say, obviously we try and get better defensively. We get healthy offensively, and we hope that we can look something like we did in the first couple of weeks. I do think there is something to the idea that, hey, we really don't know. We have a good idea of what the problem is, but until we get a chance to get healthier, it's hard to really identify what actually is the problem. So, yeah, I mean, if we give up 8 yards a carry to J.K. Dobbins and the Chargers, then you could definitely be like, hey, look, the defense is broken. Obviously it's broken. So this Chargers team just averaged 2.7 yards a carry against the Cardinals. So if they just all of a sudden did what the Eagles and Falcons and Broncos and Bucks, if we're seeing a trend like that, then sure, maybe it's okay, there's nothing that can be fixed from this defense. But I think right now we're in that kind of trial phase, I guess, for Mickey in the front office of just what is the problem, what's real, what is a byproduct of other stuff happening. So, it is kind of it is kind of a fluid situation. I want to rotate from longest call to most recent calls. So we're going to rotate back and forth throughout. So that call is from 6 days ago, and this one is from Ed from 3 days ago.
James, my man, what's going on?
Big dog.
Calling from Kentucky, man. Big fan of your content and the things that you put out.
Thank you.
I just want to call really quickly and talk about Rashid Shahed. I understand that the team is bad. We're 2-5. We're not doing the things we need to be doing. So what comes with that is a lot of noise, a lot of pessimism. True. I get it.
Yep.
People are saying Rashid Shahed is not a true receiver number 2. I strongly disagree with that, right? Through 6 games, he had 350 receiving yards, 3 touchdowns. Both categories at that time, he was ranked top 20 for all receiving options, right? You look at guys like Devontae Smith, you look at guys like Tyreek Hill, Darius Slayton, Christian Kirk, Tutu Atwell, Jameson Williams, like all these true receiver 2s, right? Yeah. He was producing more than. Now, I don't think he's the greatest route runner. I don't think he's the 50-50 guy. I don't think he's the guy you can go to on 3rd and 7 to get the automatic first down, but I don't think that's his game. He is a true deep threat. He is a true big play guy, but you can still be that and be a receiver too from a production standpoint. True. Just because he's not Michael Thomas doesn't take away from the things that he does well. I do think we need another receiver, a true third receiver, but to discredit Rashid for the things he doesn't do well, we're just putting him in bad positions at that point. But for the things he does do well, he's great at, and he's fantastic in my opinion.
Great call. Good information, good points, good thesis. Much appreciated. What I would say is this, and it's a bit controversial yet brave, but here we push the boundaries a little bit, so bear with me. I would say that Rashid Shahed's best role, man, I'm a little high up in the chair. His best role is as a receiver too, but a like 3rd or 4th receiving option, if that makes sense. Rashid, like you said, is not a great route runner. He is not a 50-50 guy. He is not a guy who is going to be the guy who you go to on 3rd and 7 for a dig route or a comeback route or a back shoulder or something like that. He is quite simply a burner who is there to take the top off the defense, and hopefully a majority of his catches are uncontested, walk-in kind of touchdowns when he's wide open. That is his role. That role doesn't work if you are the second option on the route tree, because if that is all you are doing, then that leaves a lot to be desired for a second receiver. Now, where it can work is if you're in a offense like the Saints offense, where there's 2 tight ends on the field, there's a couple of backs on the field, and in reality, you are the 3rd or 4th read. That is when it works. So when you lose Chris Olave, when you lose Taysom Hill, when you lose tight ends, when you lose other receivers, when you lose other backs, when you lose offensive line that doesn't allow Rashid Shahed to get deep, then all of a sudden it becomes a little problematic, and you can kind of see the holes in his game much more. So on one hand, I agree. He's not a wide receiver 2 if wide receiver 2 is synonymous with a second option. But in today's NFL, I don't think it is synonymous with a second option. So I like Rashid. I think he can be successful, but he definitely has to do, like, he's very linear. He has to do what he's good at, or there's not much there. So he's very reliant on the system around him and the other players around him. But I do like him. But so that's kind of how I look at it. He is unique, but a lot of the Saints or the system, is unique, I guess. So that's how I would look at Rashid. But if I wouldn't categorize him as a true number 2, even though he is our technical number 2, I guess. Okay, so we're gonna go back down here. Boom.
Hey James, this is Chris again, and man, Robert Saleh was escorted when he was fired by the Jets, by their security team. If I was in charge of the Saints, I would tell Dennis Allen, I'll say, Dennis, I wouldn't even waste my security team's time. I would tell him, walk your ass to the door, open it, get into your car, go home, pack your bags, get to the airport, fly to Denver, smoke some trees, go to the Broncos facility, and ask Sean Payton for a job like your old friend Pete Carmichael, because y'all both dress as clowns,
Chris is fired up. I will say the Broncos defense is sweet though, so I don't know if Dennis Allen is necessarily needed there.
Riding tricycles like you're Billy the Puppet from Saw, but
big shout on knowing the Saw clown's name. I didn't know he had a first name. Billy.
This season by the Saints is more horrifying than watching Saw. It's crazy.
I recently watched Saw. Well, last year. I watched Saw during Halloween. Doesn't really hold up. I didn't think so. One of my favorite movies, I thought. But it doesn't really hold up very well.
Incompetent leadership. We need a culture. We don't have one.
Yeah, that part's true. We do need a culture.
We need to restructure this team. Build this team around young talent. Why? And what's up with this tryout to the public?
Oh, that wasn't real. That was a meme.
Why are we letting the public try out to be NFL players instead of actually going out there and looking for a key free agent, looking for someone that can improve the team? You're just going to take someone off the street. It's ridiculous. What's your thoughts on all this? I don't even know if I should wear a plastic brown bag watching the game.
Definitely don't wear a plastic bag. That's very dangerous. If you do wear a bag on your head in the stands, make sure it is the paper bag. The plastic bag, that would be that'd be incredibly dangerous to go with the plastic bag option.
No, but what's your thoughts on this season? It's just crazy.
It has been an absolutely insane season. There's no doubt about that. It's been absolutely bananas, the narrative and the storyline of this season. And it's not done yet, because I promise you, if in a couple hours we beat the Chargers, we'll be all things go again. And all of a sudden there'll be playoff talk left and right.
Hey, James. Great show you got, and I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
This is Dennis finishing up on what I had sent earlier.
The boy Dennis. Now, see, we're kind of going out of order. So this. So we're going to Dennis mentioned that he had previously left a message. So kind of listening to that out of order. So that's kind of on me, Dennis. But
I really get a kick out of all of these people talking about like Carr would have made some kind of difference in the last two ball games. I doubt very seriously.
Yeah, he would not have.
I definitely know Carr couldn't have won either game. In fact,
yeah, Carr's good. I like Carr. I think he's been playing good, but the Rattler wasn't the problem. So fixing a non-problem in two absolute blowouts would not have changed the game, unless Derek Carr was going to play linebacker.
I suspect he would have been beat up worse in the Tampa game.
Yeah, thank God he didn't play, honestly, because Carr, the last thing you need in that situation is for Carr to be out there getting destroyed by the Broncos and the Bucs. So I'm glad he sat those games out, even though it was hard to watch, or not hard to watch, but just hard on Spencer. But good for Carr's recovery.
For sure. We need to be playing Rattler for the rest of the season, and like I say, maximize our draft picks for next year, cancel the contracts, get ourselves out of this horrible situation we're in, and rebuild with some decent coaches, which we finally got a decent coach, and I believe Rattler could be our starting quarterback for sure.
Yeah, I agree with some of that. I agree. We probably do need to start canceling out some of these bad contracts. We do probably need to get out from some of the aging veteran contracts. It doesn't mean we need to go into a full rebuild and sell all of our assets. I mentioned that in a video this week, the video where we reacted to the pros and cons of the Alvin Kamara extension. I do think Clint Kubiak, I think that's who you're referencing to. I think he is a good coach. I believe in him and Janoko and the rest of that offensive staff. I do think we need to rebuild defensively as far as getting rid of Allen. I do think I'm firmly on the fire Dennis Allen after the season train. And then obviously get a little younger at positions. Agree with that. We do need to maximize the draft picks. I've been saying that for a few years now, where you want to land high impact players in the draft so that your high impact players are on a rookie contract. And so I'm with you there as well. I'm seeing things now, as far as Rattler and Carr. I think if Carr is healthy, go ahead and play Carr unless there's a reason to play Rattler. Like if Carr is really bad, but he has been good this year. So I think Rattler is good. He's played these games. He'll have played after the Chargers game. Hopefully, if everyone stays healthy, he'll be, we'll get to see a nice chunk of Rattler. Be good development for him. I hope he gets that win. And, if Carr is healthy against Carolina, I have no problem going back to Carr. And I don't think that would stunt Rattler's growth. I think it's a good learning for Rattler to come in and play these games, especially, given the situation and kind of letting him, let him feel a little bit of heat, let him feel a little bit of pressure. I know it's not intentional, but I think this is good for Rattler's development. And if we go back to Carr, I think that's totally fine. Okay, let's go to Chris Swanson.
Hey, James, this is Chris again, and this season is like Trick or Treat from 2009. It's a horror movie with plot twists. It's like Sam is causing these injuries by slashing our players and having them, be hurt. It's crazy. That's a Skrmetta 4, by the way, probably a horrible one.
I've not seen that movie, so it was lost on me, but I'm sure other people who saw the movie were all about it.
Just like the Saints defense is. And so we start the first 2 weeks. We're the greatest show on turf part 2. We're possible Super Bowl contenders. And then we lose to the Eagles because we can't stop a 3rd and 16 to save our lives.
Yeah, horrible situation. Couldn't stop a 3rd and 16. Was not prepared for Eric McCoy to be missing. Taysom Hill wasn't playing. A lot happened in that game.
2 players collide just like the Minneapolis Miracle. Then we lose to the Falcons because Paul Debo wanted to turn to Joey Porter Jr. and hold.
And Rashid Shahed muffing the punt on the 1, and the pick 6, and that we lost Taysom Hill again, and that we had other issues on the offensive line.
It's crazy. And then we lose to the Chiefs because it's Patty Mahomes. Then we lose to the Bucs because our defense is and
because we had a USFL lineup out there.
Atrocious unit, and we allowed 600 yards. And then this game, piss poor effort, and the whole spotlight was on you. Prime time.
Me?
And we're not
Saints.
good enough for the lights. We're not good enough for the lights camera action.
Well, I think, is Bub Means, Mason Tipton, Connor McGovern, are they good enough for the spotlight? Probably not. Is Bub Means and Mason Tipton, Connor McGovern good enough for even like a starting role in the NFL? Probably not. So you do have to kind of grade this on a curve. Now, wins and losses do matter, and at some point, it is what it is. But I don't think, I think it's a bit much as a fan to expect the Connor McGovern, Mason Tipton, Bub Means type situation. Like when you're playing with that level of players, I don't think you can be shocked whenever it doesn't work out. Because of course it's not going to work out. Of course, that offense isn't going to work against like 3 of the best defenses in the NFL and the Chiefs, Broncos, and Bucks. So it's the same thing like with the Bucks. Like right now, if the Bucks dip in offensive production, I don't think it'd be fair for a Bucks fan to be like, man, I'm kind of souring on Baker Mayfield. I'm kind of souring on this offensive coaching staff. It's like, well, you don't think Mike Evans and Chris Godwin being out plays a part in that? At some point you kind of had to put your hands up. At some point you got to just be like, it is what it is. Like the fact that Alvin hasn't been running well, or the fact that we haven't been running well, it's not the hardest equation in the world of like why we aren't running the ball well. It's because we're playing against really good defensive fronts, and we have literal 5th string, 4th string practice squad level players on the offensive line.
So, it's time for a change. And what's this about the public tryouts? You let anybody try out. That's how hurt we are as a unit. But I want to get your thoughts on the season so far by you, Mr. James.
I think when it comes to it's like a very unsexy answer, but when it comes to a lot of this, like you do kind of have to say like, okay, it sucks, but like what can you really do? You can only do so much at a certain point. You can only do so much and expect so much when you're relegated to your 6th string, 7th string practice squad level players. I know everyone wants to win. I know you want to have hopium and copium and whatnot, but the idea that like Bub Means, Spencer Rattler, Mason Tipton, Connor McGovern, whoever else is on the line, like at that point, you're really up against it. Now that we're getting healthy, okay. Like now, like against the Chargers, okay. Let's see what we can do. And I would not like if we have if we beat the Chargers and if we have a surge in offensive production, especially from like the running game. It's again, it's a very simple equation of like what happened. It's very simple to look at that and be like, okay, well, it's not like we changed anything. It's not like we went back to the drawing board. It's the fact that we're getting healthy in really, really critical positions. So some of it is a little bit of patience where, it sucks, but you kind of had to be patient and wait for the team to be available. Now, it's kind of a lost season in that situation because as you rack up losses, like you can be patient all day long, but if you have 11 losses, like it really doesn't matter, right? So it's just an unfortunate situation when you're dealing with that many injuries. And it's almost kind of comical when you're talking about the amount of turnover on this team, like the amount of turnover of just like even people who have been released. Like Jordan Mims is forced into getting legitimate touches. A couple weeks later, he's released. Like you're forced into like Mason Tipton and Bub Means being your 1 and 2. Like that is crazy. That is a crazy situation to be in. Cameron, 2255, you are next.
Hey, James. This is Cam calling in from Texas. Do you think Kubiak's starting to look like a fraud? I mean, I understand our entire offense is on IR right now, but you got to figure it out somehow, some way. I want to touch your dome dog, no condiment, no bun. I mean, we won a Super Bowl in 2009 with people that should have been working at Walmart, and honestly, I'm tired of seeing Kamara run up the middle for no yards.
Okay, I think I just got tricked. Did I black out for a second there, or what was there? There was some dome dog reference in the middle there that I think got snuck in, and it was controversial yet brave. Pause, no pause. Let's go ahead and re-listen to that part.
I understand our entire offense is on IR right now, but you got to figure it out somehow, some way. I want to touch your dome dog, no condiment, no bun. I mean, we want to.
That part right there seems like I feel as though I'm did I accidentally take mushrooms? Now let's hear it again, because again, I'm not sure if I'm slipping into some kind of psychotic break and I'm hearing things that aren't actually happening here.
Right now, but you got to figure it out somehow, some way. I want to touch your dome dog, no condiment, no bun. I mean, we want to.
Yeah, that's nope. I am absolutely lucid. That was a dome dog, no condiment, no bun allegation. That was controversial yet brave, no doubt about that. I'm not actually sure what the question now. I'm a little flummoxed. I'm a little befuddled, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate the compliment, of course, but let's see here. So the first part is Clint Kubiak a fraud? To that, I would say no, because again, at a certain point, like you can only do so much. Like you cannot scheme Connor McGovern up to where he's not going to get dominated by Chris Jones and Vita Vea and whoever else. You can't only scheme Mason Tipton and Bub Means up to a certain level. You can only scheme Jordan Mims up to a certain level. Like at some point, it's like, okay, like if you gave Andy Reid, Spencer Rattler, Bub Means, Mason Tipton, he may get them in good situations, but I don't think he's going to make the playoffs. So no, I would put literally 0% of this on Clint Kubiak. Let's see if I missed a question here at the end of the Dome Dog situation.
With people that should have been working at Walmart. And honestly, I'm tired of seeing Kamara run up the middle for no yards.
Yeah. The Kamara up the middle thing, like that's another example too, where it's like, I'm just going to make something up here, but Like, let's say your best running plays is when your left guard pulls, okay? And your first two guards on your depth chart are really good at that. Well, let's say they get hurt and all of a sudden you have to sign some practice squad guy who's like, can't really do that. Well, you're just going to throw that play out, right? Like, you're not going to do that. You're not going to say, at a certain level, there's a critical mass of the players can't do the thing. And that's why I think, y'all hear the sirens? This is unbelievable. At a certain level, I think that we've kind of hit where the players that we have cannot do the things that we need them to do. So we're just kind of stripped down to the most basic. Don't forget too, like, these usually, like, the Saints played 3 games in whatever it was, 11 days. So from KC to Tampa to Denver, Clint Kubiak had 10 days to get 3 games in. So you're averaging like 3 days of prep per game with different injuries in each game. Like, you're prepping for KC. Oh, Derek Carr is hurt. Now you're prepping for Tampa. Oh, Chris Olave's hurt. Now you're prepping for Denver. It's like all kind of stuff's happening. So this adjustment period of like, hey, you need to adjust. Think about how fast the quote-unquote adjustment period was for Clint Kubiak. Thank you very much for the call, Cameron. And now we are down here to Anonymous.
Hey, James.
Dennis.
This is Dennis. I was 13 years old, sitting in Tulane Stadium when they kicked off the football. I've seen every ball game they've ever played.
Damn. That is 1967 was the first year of the New Orleans Saints. And Dennis, 13 years old. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I'd have to say this is, I don't know, some of the John Meekum years were very frustrating, but yeah, it's just no excuse for having Dennis Allen in there, who was a decent defensive coordinator who, with head coach responsibilities, he's obviously can't do both.
Yeah, I agree with that. Obviously, he cannot.
So you end up messing that situation up, but he's got to go.
Yep, agreed.
Rattler, no question, is absolutely could be the face of New Orleans. His one stat of throwing outside the pocket should be, which all good NFL quarterbacks are able to do these days, and very accurate. In my opinion, that alone puts him at the top of the list. I'd much rather have him than a lot of these guys.
Yeah, I agree. I think Rattler showed enough to be like, okay, there's something here. There's something here to work with. I think there's a marked difference in what we saw from Rattler and what other rookies like Kenny Pickett or Desmond Ridder, like some failed rookies. Like, when you see them play, you're like, there's something missing here. But Rattler, I think, had enough to warrant continued development and all of that. So I was pleasantly surprised with Spencer.
That were drafted high in the last draft.
Yeah.
It's very discouraging, but what I'm really discouraged by is it was quite obvious when Sean Payton left.
Yeah. Then Dennis finishes his call, I think. Then we heard the back half. So, but yeah, when Payton left, New England is going through the same thing. Like, New England loses Belichick. They think, well, maybe we can hold on to some of the culture. Gerard Mayo steps in, and they've completely fallen apart, like, culture-wise. Like, Gerard Mayo all of a sudden is calling the team soft. Belichick is coming out in the media saying that he didn't like Mayo calling them soft. Like, all of a sudden the Patriot way seems to have gone away very quickly. And sometimes it just is what it is. Like, things happen that, like, culture, even like Alabama's dealing with that right now with Nick Saban gone. Things are happening that normally wouldn't have happened. And, so it's much harder to keep that culture when the main person is gone. And Sean Payton, one hell of a coach, no doubt about it. And he's got Denver turned around pretty quick. So, it is difficult. I think the moral of the story is that you cannot cosplay a culture. Like, Peyton's gone. Allen's not going to be able to lead that culture. You got to have someone in there who's actually creating and building and nurturing the culture. So yeah, I agree. I think, we are still suffering from that hole that is Sean Payton. Jeff, you're up next. 15 seconds, quick.
Hey, James, what do you think the Saints are going to do about Kamara's contract? He obviously wants to stay a Saint, retire a Saint. What's the cap situation going to look like, and what do you foresee for his future?
All right, Jeff, I apologize. I didn't get to this this question before the answer was apparent. But, what we knew had to happen was that Alvin had to have a new contract because next year was not real. Next year, he was getting paid $20 million, $0 guaranteed, which isn't a real contract. It's a dummy year of a contract. So we knew that eventually he was going to have to get a new one. I probably wouldn't have expected. I think previously I said that I thought it was going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $10 million. He got a little bit extra, but again, you never know. You never know what turns into cash, what turns into bonuses, what turns into whatever. So, the numbers can be changed a little bit, but I'm glad he's there. I think it makes sense that the Saints signed him. So, I had a couple of videos on this, but I think overall good business was done. Thank you for the call. Jake, main event. Finish us up.
Hey, how you doing, James? I'm calling in from Fullerton, California on the Saturday after the Broncos game.
West Coast. Okay. Fullerton, Cal State. Okay, and then he said, so he's calling in Saturday after the Broncos. So a couple days to reflect.
Game. One of the worst days, games, moments, experiences of my life.
It was not fun.
I am still in destitute. Halfway through the game, my eyeballs fell out of my head, and I have still not recovered from Thursday.
Understandable.
I'm in agony. But
Yep.
I wanted to ask you a question.
No problem.
Regarding that in kind of the Saints season and kind of the outlook on the season. What would your approach have been on Friday morning? Would you have fired Dennis Allen and promoted Rizzi, or would you just have kept Allen? Because what I'm thinking is, what is the difference really? At this point, you've lost 5 straight. The season's not mathematically over, but it's pretty much over.
Yeah.
So when are we going to offload our all pros? I guess even if you were to fire Allen, wouldn't your goal be the same thing? And just to get a high draft pick and to just start the rebuild at this point?
So, good question. Great question. So, the first thing I would do is the first thing I would do is talk to, or you probably don't have to talk to the players if you're the general manager. You probably have an idea of this anyways, but you have to figure out where Dennis Allen stands in the locker room. If it's a Josh McDaniels situation and the players hate him and the players are mutinying against him and they're refusing to play and they're quitting on him and there's infighting and whatever else, you probably do have to fire him Friday morning to save the locker room. We see that a lot. We saw that with Urban Meyer. We saw that with Josh McDaniels, where the players basically quit and the players have basically said, we hate this coach. We are not going to play for him. With the Raiders, with McDaniels, we saw literal fights. We saw shouting matches, screaming matches, players-only meetings, all that stuff happening. So now on the flip side, if you determine that you're just losing, but the coach hasn't lost the locker room and there's a multitude of injuries and whatever, then yeah, like you said, there probably isn't a difference at that point. There probably isn't a direct benefit to firing Dennis Allen. So then you probably keep him around. Now, as far as the cap and as far as the assets and all that stuff, then you have to determine what the rest of the season looks like. If you determine that it's cooked and you determine that this is going nowhere fast and you determine that it's in your best interest to, in fact, initiate a soft rebuild where you start to maneuver the cap and you start to try and get out of stuff, then yeah, then you start to open up the trade book. Now it takes two to tango, right? You can't just go like Madden and click trade player, trade, force trade, whatever. So you have to assess, okay, what is the market? What can I do? Is there a trade market? Is there anything out there? You only have, I think there's a week and a half, 2 weeks left in the NFL trade deadline. So, then you got to figure out, okay, if we do trade these players, then who's actually playing, who's actually starting, what does our roster actually look like? Can we even do that? Like, there's a lot to it. There's a lot to the idea of trading players and moving players around the NFL. So then you'd have to go through that audit, and I think if you take a few steps back, I think it makes sense the way the Saints are going about it, because you can't do a full rebuild right now. The only player you can truly trade, if you really wanted to, is Alvin Kamara and probably Marshawn Lattimore. But Lattimore isn't really you don't really necessarily want to lose Lattimore, right? Like, Lattimore is one of your better players who you have under contract, like, who's playing at a high level right now. So you could argue Kamara is a little older, so trading him, like, okay, but you can't trade Carr, who's a contract you would want to get out of in a rebuilding situation. You can't trade Cam Jordan, who is a contract you would want to get out of in a rebuilding situation. You can't trade Ryan Ramczyk, who is a contract you would want to get out of. You can't trade, there's a lot of players. You can't trade Taysom Hill. So there's a lot of bad contracts that fit under that, the idea of, move these players out, start the rebuild. But realistically, you can't do that right now. So all of a sudden then, it doesn't make really any sense to trade Lattimore or trade Kamara, because you're still holding on to those bad contracts. You're still... You've taken one step forward to move 2 steps back. So you might as well, in this situation, say, we're not mathematically out of it. We are getting healthy while our opponents are getting more injured. Maybe we can piecemeal some of this stuff together, and maybe we can get to 9 wins, 10 wins, win the division, get a wild card, play in a playoff, whatever, and then we can soft rebuild where Ryan Ramczyk retires. We figure out Cam Jordan. We offload some of the bigger contracts, if that's what you want to do. You fire Dennis Allen, you move on from Carr, whatever. So if that's the destination, you kind of get there at the same time without forcing this crazy, burn the boats kind of rebuild. So it might not be a fan favorite decision, but I think the way that they're going about it right now is probably the better decision. Unless there were people just lining up to trade for everybody, which I highly doubt there was. But trading Alvin Kamara and trading Marshawn Lattimore is not getting you any closer to that soft rebuild. I don't think so. So that's what I would have done Friday morning if I was the Saints. That would have been my mindset if I was in the front office. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the calls. Much appreciated, per usual. The kickoff for Saints-Chargers is in a few hours here. If at any time during that game or after that game or whatever you want to call, go to speakpipe.com. There is a link in the description of every single of my videos to navigate you to SpeakPipe to where you can leave a message. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video.